In this lecture, we're going to learn how to define rules. A rule is a function that will take in the input value. The value returned by the function will let the validation library know if the input is valid. Let's take a closer look. By default, vValidate does not assume what requirements an input must meet to be valid. We need to tell it exactly what rules we want to enforce. Not only that, but we also need to tell it what rules will exist in our application. vValidate does not load rules into our application. This keeps the build small and lean. We need to manually import them if we want to use them. Alternatively, we can define custom rules. I find that the rules that come bundled with vValidate will cover most scenarios. Let's import some rules. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to a list of available rules. This page goes over how you can use the rules available in the vValidate library. We'll go over how to use them soon. Scroll down to the section of available rules. There are over 20 available rules. We can test for things like a credit card number, numeric, and URL values. The first rule we'll be using is called the required rule. This rule will make sure the input has a value. We want to make it a requirement for the input to be filled. This is the rule we'll want to add. The first thing we'll need to do is install the rules. The official rules are installable via a separate package. Let's switch over to the command line. If you have the server running, turn it off. After doing so, run the following command: npm install @vvalidate/rules. The rules have been installed successfully. Let's go back to our editor to start using them. The next thing we'll be doing is register the rule. Rules can be registered locally or globally. We'll be performing validation on multiple forms in our application. It would be better to register the rules globally so that they're readily available. Switch over to your editor. At the top of the validation file, we'll import the required rule from the vValidate rules package. Rules are namespaced. We must destructure the object to grab a specific rule. The next thing we'll do is update the import statement from the vValidate package. We'll want to import a function called defineRule. The defineRule function allows us to register a rule globally. The rule we register will be available to every validation form we create. In the install function, we're going to call the defineRule function. The first argument is the name of the rule. You can call this whatever you want. You don't have to use the same names listed on the documentation. The first rule we'll want to create is the required rule. For consistency reasons, we'll call it required. The second argument is a function that'll perform the validation. We don't need to define a function because we're importing the required function from the rules package. Every rule we're importing is already a function. We can pass it in as the second argument. By using the defineRule function, we've successfully registered a new rule. This rule will be available to every validation form. Let's start applying rules in the next lecture.